There's a moment you'll never forget, even if you've lived through it 100 times before. Someone throws a careless remark across the room, their tone dripping with dismissal. Maybe it's a colleague questioning your judgment in front of others. Maybe it's a partner rolling their eyes at your words, as if your thoughts carry no weight. Or maybe it's a stranger who decides to treat you like you're invisible. In that instant, everything inside you tightens. Your jaw locks, your chest feels heavy, your pride starts to burn. It's like a silent alarm ringing through your body, urging you to react, daring you to prove that you won't be disrespected. That is the crossroads. One road leads you straight into reaction, sharp words, raised voices, sarcasm that cuts as quickly as it wounds. The other leads into restraint, clarity, and control, an entirely different form of power. Most men don't realize how often they stand at that intersection, how often they hand their peace over to someone who never deserved it in the first place. And because they never recognize the fork in the road, they spend years replaying moments they wish they had handled differently. Stoicism, that ancient discipline of inner strength, calls us back to that moment and asks us to pause, not to suppress our humanity, but to master it, not to swallow every insult in silence, but to know when silence is power and when silence becomes permission. It is a philosophy forged not in comfort, but in fire, born in the courts of emperors, the cells of exiles, the streets of chaos, and yet its wisdom survives because it speaks to the very struggles we still face today. Think about it. When someone disrespects you, what is really at stake? It isn't just the words they used or the tone they carried. It's the question of whether you'll let them dictate your state of mind. Will you hand them the keys to your emotional world? Or will you hold the line, showing through your composure that your value is not up for negotiation? This is what separates men who are respected quietly from those who are toyed with openly. The man who lashes out may feel powerful in the moment, but he's only proving he can be rattled. The man who stays still, calm, deliberate, untouchable, he commands a different kind of respect, one that lingers long after the moment passes. This choice, this split in the road, is where your real strength is revealed. And it is where so many lose it without even realizing. They tell themselves they're defending their honor, when in reality, they're surrendering it. They mistake reaction for power, when in truth, reaction is surrender. True power is staying rooted when the storm tries to shake you. In this journey, we are going to confront the traps that steal your authority piece by piece. The impulse to react, the temptation to stay quiet when you shouldn't, the hunger for validation from those who wounded you, and the poison of carrying disrespect long after the moment has passed. Each of these traps robs men of their peace, their clarity, their dignity. But through the lens of Stoicism, we will see a different way forward, one where you don't just survive disrespect, you rise above it. And this isn't about theory. This is about practice, about building a presence so steady that people notice not just what you say, but what you refuse to respond to, about setting boundaries so clear that disrespect cannot linger in your life, about living in a way where your self-respect speaks louder than anyone's insult ever could. If this message resonates with you, if you've ever walked away from a moment thinking, I should have handled that differently, then you are in the right place. Stay with me as we uncover what it truly means to rise above disrespect with the discipline of a Stoic. And if you want more than just words, if you want to build strength rooted in clarity, anchored in calm, and sharpened by respect, then subscribe to True Stoic Way. Together, we are building a brotherhood of men who choose peace without ever surrendering power. First trap, the seduction of instant reaction. The sting of disrespect is immediate, almost electric. One sharp word, one mocking tone, one look that reduces your worth, and suddenly the blood surges in your veins. Your heart races, your jaw tightens, and in that instant you feel an overwhelming urge to strike back. It doesn't matter whether you've spent years cultivating discipline or minutes rehearsing patience. The impulse to respond instantly can feel irresistible. Why? Because anger feels like power. Retaliation feels like justice. When someone tries to cut you down, your ego rushes to the front lines whispering, don't let them get away with this. You want to prove that you're not weak, not someone to be disrespected. So the tongue sharpens like a blade. The comeback forms. The voice rises. For a brief moment, it feels righteous, like you've reclaimed dignity in real time. But here's the trap. That quick reaction doesn't restore your power. It transfers it. The second you lash out, you've stepped onto the battlefield they chose, under the rules they wrote, at the timing they dictated. You may win the exchange of words, but you've lost the larger war. Take the example of Daniel, a respected manager in a tech firm. Known for his intelligence and calm demeanor, he carried himself with quiet authority. But one afternoon, during a meeting, a colleague challenged him publicly. The words were dripping with condescension, designed to embarrass him in front of the team. Daniel felt the heat rise, and before he knew it, he fired back. Sarcastic, biting, ruthless. For a moment, he silenced the room. People laughed nervously. It looked like he had shut the other man down. But the aftermath told a different story. The meeting ended with Daniel storming out, his pulse racing. Colleagues whispered afterward, not about the disrespect he endured, but about his outburst. His sharp retort became the headline. He didn't seem powerful, he seemed shaken. And the colleague who provoked him? He walked away with exactly what he wanted, proof that Daniel could be rattled, evidence that he could control the tempo of the room. This is the seduction of instant reaction. It convinces you that you've reclaimed ground when in fact you've surrendered it. You've handed your peace over to someone else, letting their behavior dictate your state of mind. The Stoics saw this clearly. They warned that anger is a form of temporary madness, a fire that burns the one who carries it first. Epictetus would remind his students, you cannot control the actions of others, but you can always control your response. So what does the Stoic path offer instead? Calm precision, not combustion. The discipline to pause in the exact moment when everything in you wants to lash out. To recognize that silence, far from being weakness, can be more devastating than any insult hurled back. To understand that restraint is not avoidance, but strategy. Ask yourself, what if your silence was louder than their insult? Imagine sitting in that same meeting as Daniel, but instead of firing back, you simply looked at your colleague with unshaken composure, then redirected the conversation with measured clarity. No drama, no raised voice. Just the kind of presence that says, I will not be pulled into your mud. The room would remember that far longer than a sarcastic remark. It's not easy. It takes training to pause when provoked, to stay rooted in your values when your pride screams for retaliation. But every time you resist that pull, you reinforce a powerful truth. No one owns your inner state unless you hand it over. You remind yourself that your emotions are yours to command, not theirs to manipulate. And in a world addicted to noise, the man who remains calm becomes unforgettable. Now, this doesn't mean you ignore the disrespect forever. Boundaries must still be set. Actions may need to follow. But the key is to respond on your terms, in your timing, with clarity, not in the heat of someone else's fire. That's the difference between reaction and response, between chaos and control. And here is where the Stoic edge shines brightest. The man who can take an insult, feel the sting, and yet choose clarity over chaos. That man is feared in the best sense of the word. Not because he is aggressive, but because he is untouchable. He cannot be provoked into surrendering his dignity. His restraint speaks volumes. His composure becomes his shield. So the next time someone tries to bait you into a fight, remember, reaction is not power, it's surrender. Silence, composure, deliberate action. Those are the tools of real strength. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever fallen into the trap of reacting instantly, only to regret it later? Or have you ever experienced the power of holding your tongue when it mattered most? Share your story in the comments. This isn't just about listening, it's about building a brotherhood of men walking the Stoic path together. And if you want more guidance, more reminders to stay anchored when life pushes you to react, then make sure to subscribe to True Stoic Way. Each video is a chance to sharpen your mind, strengthen your resolve, and join a community that chooses clarity over chaos. Second trap, the danger of letting it slide. Not all disrespect arrives loudly. Sometimes it slips in quietly, wrapped in a joke that cuts just a little too deep, a text message left unanswered as a subtle way of dismissing you, or a tone of voice that says you don't matter here without ever spelling it out. These moments are easy to overlook. They don't feel like battles worth fighting. So you tell yourself, it's not a big deal. I'll let it go this time. But here lies the danger. What you let slide once, you teach them is acceptable forever. This is what the Stoics would call death by 1,000 concessions. Not a single sword through the chest, but countless tiny cuts, each one so small, you barely notice it, until one day you look in the mirror and realize you've bled out pieces of yourself just to keep the peace. Consider Michael and Sarah. In the early days of their relationship, Sarah would occasionally make dismissive comments about his ambitions. At first, Michael brushed them off. She's just joking, he told himself. Later, when she canceled plans without explanation, he stayed quiet. No need to start a fight. Months passed. The jokes became sharper, the cancellations more frequent, the disregard more obvious. Michael still avoided confrontation, thinking silence was maturity. He told himself he was protecting the relationship, but in truth, he wasn't protecting anything. He was allowing erosion. One day, Sarah looked at him not as a partner, but as someone easy to disregard. And when the relationship finally broke apart, it wasn't because of one grand betrayal. It was because of the slow, steady collapse of boundaries he never enforced. This is the hidden cost of letting disrespect slide. It doesn't just affect how others see you. It reshapes how you see yourself. Each time you swallow the sting without acknowledgement, you chip away at your own dignity. Each time you avoid conflict at the expense of your truth, you send yourself the message, my comfort is negotiable, my worth is secondary. And that message seeps deep, rewiring your sense of self until you start doubting whether you deserve better. Stoicism offers a different frame. Boundaries, the Stoics would argue, are not weapons. They are acts of kindness, to yourself first and foremost. When you draw the line with calm conviction, you're not declaring war. You're affirming your worth. Marcus Aurelius never confused patience with passivity. Seneca never dressed self-abandonment up as diplomacy. They understood that self-respect must be visible in action, not just felt in silence. So what does it look like in practice? It doesn't mean screaming or slamming doors. It doesn't mean dramatic ultimatums. Sometimes it's as simple as a quiet no. Sometimes it's walking away from a conversation that has crossed the line. Sometimes it's refusing to engage again with someone who has shown repeatedly they don't value your presence. These are small actions, but they send powerful signals. I will not tolerate what diminishes me. I will not confuse silence with acceptance. And yes, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable, especially if you've built your identity around pleasing others. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is growth. And ironically, clarity is kindness not just to you, but to them. Because when you teach people how to treat you, you either raise them to your standard or you release them from your space. In both cases, peace follows. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. The first sarcastic jab may feel insignificant, but 10 ignored jabs later, you'll find yourself weighed down by resentment, mistrust, and self-doubt. What could have been addressed with one calm statement grows into a storm that shatters everything. That is why Stoicism insists on vigilance, not paranoia, but clarity. A refusal to hand out silent permission slips to those who test your worth. So the next time someone crosses the line, pause and ask yourself, am I letting this go because it truly doesn't matter, or because I'm afraid of discomfort? If it's the latter, speak, act, move. Not with rage, but with firmness. Your voice doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Your presence doesn't have to be aggressive to be respected, but it does have to be clear. Michael's mistake wasn't that Sarah disrespected him. It was that he allowed it to become the language of the relationship. He confused silence with strength, and in doing so, he abandoned himself. Don't make the same mistake, because when you abandon yourself, others will follow. Now I want to turn this to you. Have you ever stayed silent only to regret it later? Have you ever let something slide thinking it was harmless, only to watch it grow into something that tore down your peace? If you have, you're not alone, and your story matters. Share it with us below. And if you want to mark this moment with clarity, type, "I choose peace" in the comments. Each time you do, you're not just reminding yourself, you're strengthening our Stoic brotherhood here at True Stoic Way. Third trap, chasing validation from the offender. There's a quieter trap that swallows more men than open conflict ever could. It's not the explosion of anger, nor the erosion of silence. It's the secret hunger for validation from the very person who disrespected you. Think about the last time someone crossed a line with you. Maybe they humiliated you in front of others, ignored your boundaries, or spoke words that cut deeper than they should have. Afterward, beyond the initial sting, what did you find yourself longing for? For many, it isn't revenge. It isn't even justice. It's that desperate hope. If only they would understand what they did. If only they would apologize. If only they would admit I was right. That longing feels natural. It even feels like healing. But it is the most deceptive trap of all. Because what you're really saying is, my peace depends on their recognition. My dignity depends on their apology. My worth depends on their words. And the truth is, that apology rarely comes. Take the story of Alex. After years of loyalty to his closest friend, he was blindsided by betrayal. Lies were spread, trust was broken, and Alex walked away with his reputation bruised. But instead of moving forward, he waited. He kept replaying the betrayal in his mind, thinking, if he really understood how much this hurt me, he'd come back and apologize. Weeks turned into months, months into years, still no apology. And the more Alex waited, the more his sense of self was chained to the one who had disrespected him. His healing was on hold, paused until someone else decided to grant him permission to move on. This is the danger of chasing validation. You outsource your peace. You hand over your self-worth to someone who has already proven they don't value it. And in doing so, you abandon yourself all over again. The Stoics were crystal clear on this point. Epictetus warned, never place what's up to you in the hands of what is not up to you. Their remorse, their clarity, their recognition, these are not up to you. But your detachment, your boundaries, your refusal to beg for respect, that is fully within your control. When you anchor yourself in this truth, everything shifts. You stop waiting for someone else's words to heal you. You stop rehearsing speeches in your head, hoping they'll finally see your value. You stop living in the shadow of someone else's failure. Because their lack of respect has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their limitations. Self-respect doesn't depend on external approval. You don't need an apology to reclaim dignity. You don't need recognition to move forward. You don't need closure from them. Because closure, in the Stoic sense, is something you create within yourself. It's the decision to stop bleeding energy into a wound someone else gave you and start building strength from within. Of course, this doesn't mean the hurt wasn't real. It doesn't mean you pretend the betrayal didn't cut deep. It means you refuse to let that cut define your life story. You acknowledge the pain, you learn the lesson, and then you let the offender carry their own failure. They own their disrespect. You own your peace. Imagine the freedom of no longer chasing validation. Imagine looking in the mirror and knowing without question that you are enough, whether they ever see it or not. Imagine living with the confidence that your dignity isn't dependent on another person's recognition. That is what Stoicism offers. Not cold indifference, but clear sovereignty. So the next time you feel that pull, that quiet desperation to be understood by the one who disrespected you, pause. Ask yourself, do I really want to place my healing in the hands of the person who hurt me? Or do I want to reclaim it as my own? The answer to that question will determine not just how long you suffer, but how quickly you rise. Alex eventually learned this lesson. Not because he received the apology he craved, but because he stopped craving it. He realized his worth was never up for debate. And once he stopped waiting for validation, his energy returned, his clarity sharpened, and his peace became unshakable. And that is the Stoic path. You don't teach people to respect you by begging for it. You teach them by respecting yourself so completely that their opinion becomes irrelevant. If this truth resonates with you, let it be more than words. Subscribe to True Stoic Way, where we dig deeper into the lessons that free you from emotional dependence and anchor you in unshakable clarity. Because the day you stop chasing validation is the day you start living as your own source of strength. Fourth trap, when emotions take the wheel. Disrespect doesn't just sting the mind, it shakes the body first. One cutting remark, one dismissive laugh, and suddenly your pulse is racing, your chest tightens, your jaw locks, your face grows hot. It's a reaction older than reason, hardwired into the nervous system. Before a single thought forms, the body has already declared war. And in that tiny window, between the insult and the choice, you either master yourself or lose yourself. Most men lose themselves. The urge to respond instantly is overwhelming. To snap back, to raise the voice, to prove you won't be disrespected. The mind convinces you that exploding is strength, that anger will shield you. But here's the paradox. The moment you let emotions take the wheel, you surrender control of the vehicle. You're no longer steering, you're being steered. Consider Mark. On paper, he was the kind of man others envied. A successful executive, a reputation for competence, and years of careful effort building authority in his field. But at a company dinner, one colleague decided to test him. With a smirk and a calculated tone, the man questioned Mark's judgment in front of the entire table. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a public challenge designed to humiliate. Mark felt the heat rise. His heart thundered in his chest. His mind screamed, "Don't let this slide. Show them you're not weak." And so he did. He fired back instantly, sharp, loud, ruthless. His words landed like blows. For a moment, it seemed like he had won. The room went silent. The challenger shrank back. Mark believed he had defended his honor. But what lingered afterward wasn't victory. It was regret. Colleagues didn't talk about the disrespect he endured. They talked about his explosion. The story wasn't the insult. The story was Mark's reaction. His outburst overshadowed his reputation for composure. And the man who provoked him. He walked away with exactly what he wanted. Proof that Mark could be rattled. Evidence that he could lose control. This is the danger of letting emotions drive. The insult becomes a footnote and your reaction becomes the headline. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They taught that emotions are like fire. Controlled, fire warms the home, cooks the food, lights the darkness. Uncontrolled, it burns everything in its path. Anger convinces you it's power, but in reality, it is fire spilling beyond the hearth. Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, they never denied feeling anger. They denied letting anger own them. Stoic practice doesn't mean pretending you're unaffected. It means recognizing the difference between feeling an emotion and obeying it. It's the pause between the spark and the flame, the breath that steadies the chest, the thought that whispers, "I am not their puppet." What if Mark had chosen differently? What if instead of exploding, he paused, just long enough to let the adrenaline settle? Imagine him responding with calm precision, maybe even silence, then steering the conversation back with authority. The room would have remembered his composure far longer than his colleague's jab. His presence would have said, "I am untouchable," without a single raised word. That is the power of mastery. Not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to be ruled by it. And here's the deeper truth. When you let someone's insult provoke an eruption, you're no longer responding to their words. You're reacting to your wounded ego. You lose sight of the bigger picture. You abandon reason. And in doing so, you let their lack of character pull you out of yours. But when you pause, when you breathe, evaluate, and act from clarity, you flip the script. You remain the author of your actions. You don't hand over the pen to the one who provoked you. And in a world addicted to noise, your calm becomes louder than any shout could be. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect indefinitely. Boundaries still need to be drawn. But the decision of how and when you draw them must be yours, not dictated by a rush of adrenaline. Real strength is deliberate. Real strength is measured. Real strength is the ability to say, "I see what you're trying to do, and I will not participate." Mark eventually realized his explosion hadn't defended his reputation, it had damaged it. What would have been more powerful was silence, or a measured response, that reminded everyone in the room his self-respect was not negotiable. And that's the essence of Stoicism. Not suppression, but mastery. Not denial, but discipline. So, let me turn this question to you. Have you ever lost control in the heat of the moment, only to regret it later? Or have you discovered the strength of staying calm when provoked? Share your experience below, because your story might be the exact lesson another man in our community needs to hear. And if you want to sharpen that ability, to stay calm in the fire, to master yourself when the world tries to shake you, subscribe to True Stoic Way. This is more than a channel. It's a brotherhood of men learning together that true power is not in explosion, but in control. Fifth trap: silence at the wrong time. Silence can be power, but silence misused can also be surrender. This is where many strong men and women lose their footing, not because they yelled, but because they didn't speak at all when the moment demanded it. We often tell ourselves that silence is maturity, that staying quiet makes us the bigger person, that walking away is always the noble choice, and sometimes it is. But there is a crucial difference between silence as composure and silence as permission. When silence is mistaken for acceptance, it does not protect you, it erases you. Consider Elise. She was admired for her composure, her grace, her ability to rise above conflict. In her workplace, she carried herself with professionalism, but slowly, small slights began to creep in. Her manager excluded her from meetings where she clearly belonged. Credit for her ideas went to louder voices in the room. At first, Elise told herself to stay quiet. No need to make a scene. They'll see my value eventually. The second time, she rationalized again. By the third, her silence had trained everyone around her. They began to treat her absence as normal, her contributions as optional, not because she wasn't capable, but because she never corrected the narrative. Her silence didn't look like strength, it looked like agreement. And by the time she realized it, her influence had already been hollowed out. This is the trap. Silence at the wrong time does not preserve peace. It simply teaches others how little they can get away with giving you. The Stoics never confused peace with passivity. Marcus Aurelius did not hold an empire together by refusing to speak. Seneca did not write letters piercing the corruption of Rome by swallowing his voice. They valued calm, yes. They valued restraint, yes. But they also knew that clarity must sometimes be spoken, that boundaries must sometimes be made audible, that silence, when it hides truth, corrodes dignity. So what does Stoic silence look like? It's deliberate, not default. It's chosen, not forced. And when the moment calls for clarity, Stoic silence steps aside for Stoic speech. Not shouting, not pleading, not endless explanations, just calm, firm truth. A simple, unshaken, "This is not acceptable." Imagine Elise if she had spoken after that first exclusion. A steady voice. "I should be in that meeting. My work is directly tied to its outcome." Not dramatic, not aggressive, just clear. Imagine her claiming credit for her ideas publicly, not to boast, but to affirm reality. That firmness, delivered calmly, would have set a boundary the room couldn't ignore. Instead of fading, her presence would have sharpened. And this is the lesson. Silence at the wrong time chips away at confidence, both in others' eyes and in your own. Every time you ignore that gut feeling, every time you convince yourself it's not worth the trouble, you shrink. You disconnect from the part of you that knows you deserve better. And eventually, people don't just assume you'll stay quiet. They depend on it. Stoicism calls us to a higher standard, to recognize that our responsibility is not to avoid discomfort, but to honor truth. That when the situation demands a voice, it is cowardice, not wisdom, to stay mute. Because clarity delivered with calm is far more powerful than noise delivered with rage. So ask yourself, where have you stayed silent too long? What conversations are you avoiding? What disrespect have you allowed to grow louder because you never addressed it? The longer you wait, the more expensive the silence becomes. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. And when you choose to use them with precision, you don't just defend yourself, you redefine yourself. If this part struck a chord, don't just watch. Speak your truth here and now. Join our Stoic journey by subscribing to True Stoic Way and surround yourself with a brotherhood that values clarity over conflict. Because when your voice carries the weight of calm conviction, no one can mistake it for weakness. Sixth trap, carrying disrespect inside you. Not all disrespect leaves a bruise on the surface. Some of it lingers invisibly, not on the body, but in the mind. Long after the words were spoken or the gesture made, you find yourself replaying the moment. The tone, the smirk, the silence that followed. You analyze it from every angle, dissecting what you should have said, what you could have done differently, and in doing so, you give their insult a second life. What was once just a moment becomes a shadow that follows you into new conversations, new relationships, even new opportunities. The person who disrespected you may have forgotten the exchange hours later, but you're still carrying it days, weeks, sometimes even years down the line. This is the final trap, carrying disrespect inside you. The Stoics warned about this danger with brutal clarity. They taught that resentment is suffering twice. Once when the event occurs, and again every time you relive it. By holding on, you reopen the wound, turning a single cut into a lifelong scar. And the tragedy is this: the weight you carry isn't even yours. It belongs to the one who disrespected you. But by clutching it close, you make their behavior part of your identity. Think of it like walking with a stone in your shoe. It doesn't kill you outright, but it slows you down, changes your posture, drains your energy. Over time, the discomfort shapes the way you move, the way you think, the way you show up in the world. What should have been left behind becomes the invisible hand steering your life. The Stoic solution is not denial. It is not pretending you were unaffected. It is the practice of release. To look directly at the moment, acknowledge it for what it was, extract the lesson, and then set it down. You don't carry it as a permanent burden. You use it as a brief teacher. Did it reveal someone's true character? Good. Now you know. Did it show you where your boundaries were too thin? Perfect. Now you can reinforce them. Beyond that, it deserves no more of your energy. Because here's the truth. Every time you replay the insult, you fill the space of your mind with noise that should have been discarded. And the more noise you allow in, the less room you leave for clarity, focus, and growth. Stoicism reminds us, you may not control what others do, but you always control what you choose to carry. Imagine if, instead of rehearsing the disrespect over and over, you replaced it with a simple act of release. A breath, a journal entry, a clear decision. This does not belong to me anymore. Imagine walking lighter, unchained from the insult, free to move toward your goals without dragging their failure behind you. That freedom is not given, it is chosen. Letting go is not easy. Your pride will argue, your ego will scream. It will tell you that holding on gives you control, that replaying it keeps you prepared. But in reality, it only keeps you poisoned. The fire you feed burns you first. Release isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You let go not because they deserve peace, but because you do. So the next time that memory creeps back in, ask yourself, is this helping me? Or is this just me suffering twice? If it's the latter, lay it down. Adjust your boundaries. Keep the lesson. Discard the poison. Your life is too valuable to be weighed down by moments that should have been left in the past. Now I want to invite you to take this step with us here and now. In the comments, write the words, "My peace is not negotiable." Let it be more than a phrase. Let it be a declaration, a reminder that you refuse to carry what isn't yours. Each time one of us writes those words, it strengthens this community of men and women walking the Stoic path together. Because in the end, the greatest act of self-respect is not just walking away from disrespect, it's refusing to carry it with you. Stoic Manifesto, rising above disrespect. We have walked through 6 traps, 6 silent thieves that rob men and women of their dignity, clarity, and power when faced with disrespect. And if you've seen yourself in even one of these, know this: you are not weak, you are human. The difference is that most never name these traps, so they fall into them again and again. But once you see them, you can step around them. The first trap was the seduction of instant reaction. That fiery impulse to snap back, to cut with words, to to defend pride in the heat of the moment. It feels like strength, but it's surrender. Because the second you explode, you let them set the terms of the battle. The second trap was letting it slide. The peacekeeping silence that slowly erases boundaries until you no longer recognize yourself. What you tolerate today becomes the standard tomorrow, and the erosion is subtle until it's irreversible. The third trap was chasing validation from the offender. That quiet desperation for an apology that never comes, for recognition from someone who already proved they don't value you. By waiting, you hand them the keys to your healing. You let your future depend on their approval. The fourth trap was letting emotions take the wheel. The moment your body surges with heat, your chest tightens, and you lash out in anger. But anger is fire, contained, it warms, unchecked, it burns. The man who controls himself commands respect, while the man who erupts confirms he can be rattled. The fifth trap was silence at the wrong time. The mistake of thinking all silence is noble. True, silence can be power, but in the wrong moment, it is permission. And permission becomes erasure. Your presence fades because your voice never affirmed your worth. The sixth trap was carrying disrespect inside you, replaying it, nursing it, turning it into identity. Resentment makes you suffer twice, once when it happened, and again every time you relive it. The burden you carry isn't yours, but you've made it part of your life. 6 traps, each one disguised as protection, each one leading to the slow surrender of self. But Stoicism offers another way, a way not of denial, but of mastery. A way of living where peace is not the absence of conflict, but sovereignty of the mind. Because strength is not about winning the moment. It's about owning the long game. The man who shouts loudest may win the last word, but the man who stays rooted in clarity wins respect that echoes long after the noise fades. The woman who swallows every slight may avoid conflict today, but the one who calmly affirms her worth builds a life free of quiet erasure. The Stoic vision is simple. Let your calm be your response. Let your boundaries speak louder than your pride. Let your dignity set the terms of engagement. And when disrespect inevitably arrives, as it will, meet it not with chaos, but with clarity. Not with surrender, but with sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That is the heart of this manifesto. Disrespect is an outside event. Your reaction is yours to command. Your peace is yours to protect. Your worth is yours to define. And when you live this way, when you refuse to be hijacked by emotion, when you refuse to hand out silent permission slips, when you refuse to beg for validation, you become untouchable. People sense it. They recognize it. They may not always like it, but they respect it. Because they know your dignity is not negotiable. This is what it means to rise above disrespect without ever lowering yourself. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about feeling fully and then choosing wisely. It's not about erasing conflict. It's about mastering yourself so that no conflict can erase you. So let this be the Stoic manifesto. Do not react instantly, for reaction is surrender. Do not let it slide, for silence can be erasure. Do not chase their apology, for your healing is yours alone. Do not let anger steer, for fire uncontained destroys. Do not stay mute when clarity is needed, for your voice affirms your worth. Do not carry their failure inside you, for resentment poisons twice. Instead, live anchored. Live with calm precision. Live with boundaries that honor your dignity. Live with clarity that teaches the world how to treat you. If this journey through the 6 traps has stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Act on it. Apply it. Let it transform the way you carry yourself in every room you enter. And if you want to stay grounded in this practice, not just for a day, but for a lifetime, then this is your call to action. Like this video, share it with a brother who needs it, and subscribe to True Stoic Way, because together we rise quietly, strongly, unshakably.